from the political jungle, let's move to the real one. And I'm sure all of y'all I'm not sure if all of y'all have seen Elephant Whisperers, that wonderful Oscar-winning documentary directed by Kartika Gonzalez, which made waves across India. And I was personally moved by this story, which had this couple deep in the jungles, Boman and Belly, a very poor couple that lived in the Mudumalai forest that both Johnsingh and Raman Sukumar, I guess you have extensively tracked and toured, and who brought up this baby elephant called Raghu. And then in September last year, we were witness to another example of wildlife conservation when the cheetahs, the African cheetahs, were brought in to the Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh. For the first time in 75 years, the cheetah had returned in some way or the other. This, of course, reflects the state of the wildlife in India and the problems we have. One is an orphan elephant, the other is being brought elsewhere and put here. The good news is that Project Tiger has shown an increase in the number of tigers, and that's hope. But let's not forget that elephants and other animals continue to be poached extensively in India as it is being done across the world. We live in South India, which is the biological heart of India in some senses. The kind of forests that these states have, the kind of wildlife that it preserves and protects is outstanding. It's worldwide, it's a world heritage that we are at the moment trying to protect. Unfortunately, there's shrinking space, and really it is code red for India's wildlife. So to discuss what we need to do, we have two eminent wildlife scientists and very old friends of mine. We all started our careers together. Raman Sukumar in Indian Institute of Science, who is now a professor over there. AJT Johnsingh, who at a very young age, he did this outstanding study on dholes, the wild dogs that lived in this area, probably path-breaking. Sukumar is the top expert on elephants. Everybody consults him on the subject. And so let's get down to discussing with them what they think needs to be done. And I'm going to start with you, Sukumar, with looking at man-animal conflict. Somewhere there is a problem that is arising, whether it's shrinking forests, whether it is this. What do you think needs to be done? Take the context of elephant itself that you are such an expert on. Let's start. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj, for that introduction. See, the issue of conflict between wildlife and people, or more specifically elephants and people, it's a complex issue. You cannot attribute it to a single cause. And the causes range from loss of habitat, fragmentation of habitat, and so on, which are kind of historical processes that we have gone through.
Before you get into it, I'd just like you to talk about this movie that I don't know if you saw the documentary, and what was your reaction to it as an expert that's there?
Yeah, I must confess that I have not seen the full movie because I don't have Netflix. But I was very happy that that movie got recognition, at least for a single reason. And that is, I think the deep bonds between indigenous peoples in our country and wildlife has been grossly underappreciated. And the fact that this couple at Mudumalai Elephant Camp, which both Johnsingh and I have known for more than 40 years, that they looked after and they brought up a young elephant successfully, I think has brought back a kind of a deeper appreciation of the traditional knowledge systems that our tribal population have got. And I hope they get better recognition. And I hope that the elephants in captivity, which have generally been a subject that a lot of activists are against keeping elephants in captivity, I hope that that comes back to the agenda in terms of what are the best welfare measures that we can take to keep the elephants in captivity. I think if it does this job, I'll be extremely happy.
So let's come to the main point, which is what is going wrong, say elephants for instance. What's going wrong in India? We do have one of the largest populations of elephants. What would be the key danger signals that you see?
Yeah. I'll probably answer it in a very different way. I think a lot has gone right in the last 40 years or so. You just mentioned that the tiger population of India has increased. If it has not increased in certain places, it has at least stabilized. And I think from that point of view, if you look at, I've been watching elephants for 44 years now. And the population of elephants in the country has probably doubled during this period. So it's a spectacular success. And even if we don't accept that the population has doubled, it has at least gone up by 50%. Starting about 30 years ago, we launched Project Elephant. We put in a system of Project Elephant reserves, and that has helped consolidate the populations and has actually led to an increase in the elephant population. What is going wrong today is, I think, this is very region specific. I'm extremely optimistic about the future of elephants and other wildlife in the south.
Right.
And we have a very good system of protected areas, elephant landscapes, general levels of awareness, a very good population. More than 50% of India's elephants are found in the south and so on. But we face serious problems in East Central India, for instance. You take states like Jharkhand and Odisha, where the elephants have shown, their disinclination to stay inside the forest areas, and they are moving and they are dispersing into neighboring states of Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh. And in the process, there's a very high level of conflict. If you take the northeast of the country, there has been enormous loss of habitat, and that is a factor that is contributing to rise in human-elephant conflict. But what I feel is going wrong today is that the original vision of Project Elephant, which is that we can protect a large, charismatic animal like the elephant, in what we call a sustainable landscape. I think that has become a little fuzzy over time, with the result that our focus on the elephant reserve or the elephant landscape has been lost, and elephants are now expanding their range into agricultural areas, into human-dominated areas. And we still don't have a very coherent policy as to how to deal with these elephants that are outside the elephant reserves and outside the forest areas.
I'm going to come back to that because there's been a recent incident over here that has caused a lot of pain and concern and death also. Johnsingh, I want to bring you into this. You looked at big cats, Rajaji, looked at all these places. What is your reaction to the entire thing of bringing the cheetah here? It's a done deal. You think this is a good idea? Do you think it'll survive? We've had, of course, fatalities, but that's quite normal whenever you have a population. Are we doing it right, or what would you advise?
See, in my opinion, unfortunately, we don't have the suitable habitat for cheetah. For example, Kuno, where they have introduced, 8 cheetah from Namibia and 12 from South Africa. I know that area exceedingly well. It's partly hilly, densely wooded. There is only one prey. And summer the temperature is 47, 46. Where Namibia, the temperature will be winter now. And unfortunately, the cubs which are born, 3 of them died. Even the 4th one also supposed to be very weak. I have a fear, this cheetah which came from Namibia, they'll be under enormous heat stress. Okay. And there is a good population of leopard also. See, recently that our Divya Bhanu Singh has brought up an excellent book. I read through that. I hope I read an article also to you people.
Right.
So that when I go through that book, there is no place in the history of Asiatic cheetah where leopard and cheetah occurred together. In the landscape level, they occurred. For example, in my district in Tirunelveli South, there were cheetah, there were black bear in the flat area. But if you go up in the Western Ghats, you had leopard, wild dog and tiger. Those 3 predators they came down. Cheetah never went up. On a landscape level they occurred, but not in one place. But here we have put cheetah in a place where they have 30-40 leopards are there. So now that cheetah, when it comes out of that enclosure where the leopards are not there, they are going to have a problem. So there are several factors which are against cheetah in Kuno. Now they are thinking about taking cheetah other areas also. Even those places the situation is not very rosy.
So you are not very optimistic of this experiment that we're doing of bringing the cheetah back?
As I told you, we don't have the right habitat. We need at least some 5,000 square kilometer area with a lot of blackback, lot of chinkara, You know, that type of habitat with a lot of that type of prey is needed. With no predators like a tiger or wild dog or leopard should not be there. If they are there, cheetah is a very meek animal. When you read through that book by our Divya Bhanu Singh, you will find there is only one report of cheetah attacking a person. But on the contrary, leopard, you know about the man-eaters of Kumaun, man-eating leopard of Rudraprayag, enormous problem with the leopards in our country. So in front of leopard, you know, the cheetah will be nowhere. So I think we don't have the habitat where there are no predators, a lot of prey like chinkara and blackbuck, a vast open area. We don't have the type of habitat actually.
I'm going to come back to the big cats, particularly the lion, but I want to bring Sukumaran in because of this recent incident that I think the elephant's name was Arikombam. Am I right? That rogue elephant which killed more than 13 people close by here was tranquilized and transported to the Periyar Tiger Reserve there. What lessons can we derive from this particular incident? What is it talking about the larger picture in India?
You see, I actually went to that area very recently. Just last week I was there. And I think this is sort of symptomatic of the kind of conflict that elephants have with people. You know, essentially 80% of the conflict is because of these male elephants that are seeking superior nutrition and forage from agricultural areas. And they are also looking for stored food grain and salt and so on and so forth. And actually, if you look at the conflict situation between elephants and agriculture, it's essentially a conflict between male elephants, by and large. I'm not saying everywhere, but by and large, that's the situation. You also have, very close to Bangalore, you know, between Bangalore and Mysore, you have about 50 male elephants now that are totally outside the forest areas. They're totally outside the elephant reserves. And these elephants have no other reason to go there because there are no family groups, there are no female elephants there. They go only to feed on the agricultural crops that provide, they are like supermarkets out there. So the lessons that we have to learn from Arikomban is a lesson that, is something that I wrote about more than 40 years ago, based on my research, that male elephants have an intrinsic biological urge, to come into greater conflict with people because they want that food, they want to grow large in size, they want to dominate other males, they want to come into musk successfully, and they want to mate with female elephants.
Sounds familiar among men as well.
It sounds very familiar, but that's a law of nature, that's a law of biology. And I think we have largely ignored, the lessons from this. Now, coming to Arikomban more specifically, what I must say is that if you look at southern India, if you come, if you look at the forest area south of the Palakkad Gap, there is a very large elephant reserve, which is the Nellyampathi's Anamalai's Iravikulam Elephant Reserve, which has got a sizable elephant population. And then at the southern edge of this is a town called Munnar. Now, you can drive for about 100 kilometers from Munnar south to Kumuli through tea gardens and through cardamom plantations. These are called the Cardamom Hills. And this is a landscape largely devoid of elephants, except that now you have about 20 or 30 or 40 elephants in that area, and Arikomban is part of that. Now, south of Kumuli, you have again a very large elephant population in Periyar, Rani, Konni, Srivilliputtur, Megamalai, and all those areas. So in 30 years ago, when we designed Project Elephant, the area where the Arikomban is found was not part of an elephant reserve, because the focus was on trying to provide, viable habitats, viable landscapes for sustaining viable populations of elephants in the long term.
Right.
Okay. Now, Arikomban and a few other elephants seem to have come into this area, and there was a story about relocation of people, on revenue land, which I think that 20 years ago that was the right thing to do, because this is not a traditional elephant habitat in the past few decades. I mean, you can always go back 100 years or 200 years and say elephants were there. Okay, so this population of elephants, about 30 or 40 elephants, in my considered opinion, does not constitute a viable, demographically, genetically, it's not a viable population of elephants. It requires a different kind of a management perspective. Having said that, I think what the Kerala government has done in capturing these elephants and relocating this elephant to the Periyar area is absolutely the right thing that they have done. Because a lot of human lives have been lost because this elephant has broken into houses and, in search of food grain, and in the process people have been killed. So they have done absolutely the right thing in relocating it into Periyar. Also, for a secondary reason, you mentioned poaching. Ivory poaching, I remember you did one of the first stories on ivory poaching with me, I don't know, 30 or 40 years ago.
1981, yes.
But those were the heydays of poaching in the south. And Periyar was one of the worst affected areas. And because only male Asian elephants have tusks, only males were poached, and the male-female ratio became very, very unequal. So taking Arikomban and putting it into an area which has historically suffered poaching and loss of males was absolutely the right thing to do. You can augment the contribution of male genes into the population. But I'll just end this by just saying one more sentence. If Arikomban continues his old habits and kills more people or comes into conflict, then either Tamil Nadu or Kerala may have no other choice but to take him into captivity.
Oh, okay. That's a very strong thing. Johnsingh, I want to...
No, one more. I'll
Yes.
add to that. Capturing a tusker like Arikomban, which has killed many people, which is in definition a rogue, it can be tamed only by two tribal communities in Tamil Nadu. Malasar community in Anamalai and Kurubar community in Mudumali. These are the only people who can even tame a rogue tusker like Arikomban within 3-4 months.
Wow,
Okay.
that's
But
interesting.
remember, taking large number of bulls into captivity is very expensive. The forest department has to spend a lot of money. When you keep them in the habitat, they destroy the habitat in that area. If you go to Tapakad, elephant camp in Mudumale, the entire area, the trees have been killed by the captive elephants. So having too many captive elephants also is not very good for the habitat, not very good for the economy of the state. But Arikomban should be removed
From that. I'm coming to you on the big cats, particularly our king of the jungle, the lion, which is only restricted now to Gir forest. We made this effort to bring the cheetah. Currently, the lion population is sort of confined to that particular area of Gir forest of thing. The concern has been for environmentalists and ecologists and wildlife biologists is that there is every danger that if there is a major disease attack, you could wipe out that entire population. Second, same man-animal conflict is going on because there are too many elephants, too little, habitat for them. What, in your opinion, Johnsingh, one needs to do to bring those big cats out? Where are the other places you would suggest that the Gir lions be located?
See, now Gir lands, they have occupied nearly 30,000 square kilometer area. They spread all over the area. And if lion conservation is successful in Gujarat, remember Gujarat is a vegetarian state. Lot of beef, lot of cattle, lot of nilgai, wild pigs. I used to tell, if Kerala people are living in Gujarat, lion conservation won't be successful. Because, they'll eat all the beef. There won't be many cattle available for the lions. Lot of prey is available for the lions. So they are thriving very well there. And now, they are arguing, already our populations are bit isolated. And so that, according to one argument by the Gujarat people, so that disease may not be a threat to the Gujarat. Unfortunately, what has happened, the former chief minister of Gujarat state, he has written in red ink in the file, lions will not be given for second home.
You're talking of Prime Minister Modi, who was then Chief Minister of Gujarat.
He has
right?
written. So one IAS officer told me, sir, even God cannot change it now. So that, even another thing, even the people of Gujarat, they are very much attached to lions. If any team goes to Gujarat to capture some lions, I tell you that team will be beaten up. Because they are very passionate about it.
You're speaking away from the mic, yeah.
Okay. So, but it would be nice to have 2-3 other populations away from Gujarat. But whether it's going to happen or not, it's a very $1 million question actually.
Now, we've got barely 5 minutes left. I see Kaushik Deka, who's our Northeast editor expert. Kaushik, you must have heard Sukumar say that Northeast is a major problem for elephants. You want a question to ask him what to do there?
We have earlier spoken, sir, on conservation, but my question is pretty simple, that man-elephant conflict, man-animal conflict, particularly about elephants in Assam, how do we resolve that? Because we need development, we need roads and other things. We're on the pathway to progress, but at the same time, that conflict is also increasing, and it's very difficult for the government agencies to explain to people that we also need to take care of animals.
Yeah, I'm sort of quite familiar with the situation in Assam. The Assam, is probably one state that suffered enormous loss of habitat during the 1990s. Sonitpur and those areas, you're very familiar with that. So the conflict got exacerbated because several hundred elephants were left without a home, natural home. Because the forest was cleared and agriculture and settlements took over those areas. Having said that, I think the only hope for elephants in the northeast, and the same holds true not just for Assam or the northeast, but for the rest of the country, we need to bring the focus back firmly on integral landscape scale planning and for conservation of wildlife.
Just when you say that, it's a big word. Can you just make it simple for layman to understand?
I'll try to make it very simple. India started off with the individual protected area conservation. You had a Kaziranga, you had a Manas, you had an Amdafa, and so on and so forth. But this was largely in the context of tiger conservation. But when we designed Project Elephant, we explicitly recognized the fact that elephant is a long-ranging animal, and therefore they cannot be confined to small protected areas. But we have a very complex land use pattern in the country, and land use because of historical patterns of colonization and agriculture and settlement, and now industrial development and so on. So you need to look at landscapes which are protected areas with intervening forms of land use, which is reserve forest, in some cases revenue for lands under forest, and settlements and agriculture. But this is an integrated area. They are not separated. A particular landscape has a free gene flow of elephants or whatever other wildlife across this area. And I think this is that approach, what I call sensible and sustainable landscape scale planning for conservation, is the one most suited to our national circumstances.
Right.
A lot of people talk about the fact that India is now the largest human population in the world, 1.4 or 1.5 billion. But what I would say, the irony of India is that in spite of 1.4 or 1.5 billion people, we still have 3,000 tigers and 30,000 elephants because of our close cultural connect. So many of the Western models of conservation do not apply in our country, and we need to reinvent or invent our own conservation paradigm or conservation model.
You must have Atmanirbhar in conservation as well.
In conservation,
but Johnsingh wants a quick word on this. Yes.
In my opinion, we have too many elephants in India. Our habitats are degraded. I used to tell my trainees and everybody, you walk in the elephant habitat, assuming that you are an elephant. With very difficulty, you will find something edible to eat in the forest. All inedible plants like lantana, cassia spectabilis. The cassia spectabilis in the lower Nilgiris is taken over all the moist areas. When I did my wild dog study 45 years ago, they were not there. They have fabulous flowers. Some officer planted it. Now it has spread all over the place. The habitat degradation is enormous. We have too many elephants. In my opinion, the elephant population in the conflict area need to be controlled, reduced. Very, very important. 500 people are getting killed by elephants. It's not affecting the consciousness of people, decision makers, they are in Dehradun, Delhi, Bangalore, they talk about, but only the poor people are suffering. We can't say the poor people are suffering because of tolerance. No, they are voiceless.
No, I just want to, before you intervene, it's a very interesting point. You have a problem of plenty. And as Johnsingh was saying, the habitat is degraded, so these become rogue elephants. Now, Africa, for a long time, they were permitted culling of elephants to control the population. Is it time now to do this holy cow question and say, should we start culling elephants in the country?
No, I think we should start confronting very tough questions, relating to conservation. I advise culling in the African style of culling, I would say that selective capture of elephants certainly has a place. Given our long historical association, the fact that elephants have been captured and tamed and put to use over the last 4,000 years. But we have to be very prudent, scientific, and very selective about it. There could be these male elephants that have turned rogue, if I may, within quotes. There are these elephant groups or herds like in southern Bengal, which have no natural habitat left anymore, and they are ravaging crops and they are killing people right and left. So we have to be very, very selective when we talk about elephant culling. Culling means it is not in our conservation ethos to go and shoot elephants. So let's rule that out almost completely, except in the case of a few rogue elephants. But otherwise, there is a place for very selective capture. At the same time, there is a need for reproductive control of elephants. And there are scientific, biological means of reproductive control, which we need to explore. We need to experiment with it, especially in the case of elephant populations that are not in their designated elephant reserves or natural habitats, but are roaming fairly freely in agricultural areas amongst human settlement and causing misery to people.
Quick word from you, Johnsingh, on culling.
Even in Africa nowadays, I think they are not doing culling. In those days, when they did the culling, what they did was, you'll go to an area, if there are 30, 40 elephants, they are excellent hunters or shooters. Within 2-3 minutes, all the elephants will be in the group will be killed. They thought the trauma was not passed on to other elephants. But elephants have amazing sense of communication. Now we have this, mobile. We send a message when you are in distress. Like that elephant can send a message. So a lot of opposition to that. Even in Kruger, for example, they have too many elephants. The habitat is getting destroyed. Even they are hesitating to go for culling. But like Sukumar said, we have to go for immunocontraception where all possible. But capturing too many elephants, as I told, it has got its own great problems in our country.
Okay, I know this is a very tough subject to do. We've run out of time, but I'm just going to ask you a very personal question. I've had the privilege of you taking me into forests. Johnsingh, we spent a full day at Rajaji. You've taken me into Madhubalai and other areas, and we looked at elephants and everything. What is your favorite wildlife story? If you had one story, what would that be? We'll start with Sukumar and then we'll come to Johnsingh.
Wildlife story?
Favorite, not story, experience, something that really, you've been confronting wildlife for so long. What would be that one story that you would remember?
I think for me it's a very, very simple story. In my book, Elephant Days and Nights, the very last paragraph I wrote about it. This was the last week in the field when I was doing my doctoral research. And I was, walking in the jungle, very close to a stream called the Arekadavu in the Satyamangalam forest areas. And it was late in the evening, at a time, and you can only describe, I don't know, you sit out in a natural area at about 6 or 6:30 p.m., after sunset, the whole world seems to stand still. Okay, so there I was sitting by the side of the stream, and from behind me, a herd of elephant came.
Wow.
And just passed very close to me. I knew no fear at all. Elephants can be very dangerous. I was totally at peace with the elephants. The elephants silently crossed the stream. I could only hear the gurgling of the waters of that stream. There's a little baby that slipped, and the mother came and immediately nudged it and pushed it. And the entire herd crossed just a few meters away from me. I was just sitting quietly. And that's my favorite elephant story. Coexistence, but perhaps not always possible.
Wonderful. Johnsingh, a lovely story. Johnsingh, which is your favorite wildlife?
My story is a bit tragic. 1977 December, then the director of Wildlife Institute of India had come with 7 officer trainees to Bandipur. So they asked me to take them on a walk. I told them I'm not supposed to take because forest department told it's an elephant area, don't take people. They told me we are IFS, Indian Forest Service. We have the freedom of the forest. You take you. So I took some of the students. The officer, director, he came with me one evening. Next day morning also he wanted to come with me. The trainees were about to go to Mudumalai. We were walking along the road, December, I think 7th, 1977, misty morning. He had a long lens and so on. He is Rajasekaran Iyer from Kerala Cadre actually. He was working in Wildlife Institute of India. When we were walking, I heard an elephant coming through the bushes. I told him, let us wait. He told me, I know more about elephants. If you are afraid, you stay behind. He pushed me. He went ahead. Elephant came charging. You tried to climb a tree. You could not climb. He got down and ran, sat in the lantana bush, thinking the elephant will go straight. The elephant killed him.
Wow. What a story.
Very thing, in Bandipur, the jungle crows used to locate the kills. I located all my leopard and tiger kills using the jungle crows. They used to even follow wild dogs because they know when wild dog make a kill, they'll be. So I ran. I also ran in one direction. I came back to the road. After 10 minutes, I was calling his name. And there was no response. And the jungle crows were flying around the bush. Then I knew that there is a kill.
Wow. Well, what wonderful experiences we've had. Both beautiful stories. On one side, you can bring peace and conservation. On the other side, if you're not careful, if you violate the laws of the jungle, you'll pay with your life. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a very warm round of applause for this very touching moment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.